Mid Sussex District Council meeting this evening. And before I officially open the meeting here this evening, John and I would like to thank both councillors and officers for those so very kind words and support we have received during this really difficult time. We are truly grateful to you all. I'm now going to pass to our Vice Chairman, who will hold a minute's silence for Edward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask you all to stand in memory of Councillor Belsey and for 1 minute. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone. Another sad passing is our past councillor Prue Moore, who sadly died. Her funeral is tomorrow. So may I ask you all to stand again for a minute's silence for Prue Moore. I'm now going to ask the leader to say a few words about Prue Moore. And if anybody else wishes to speak, please raise their hands once the leader has finished speaking.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And if I may, perhaps I can say a few words about Edward as well. Because we have lost, and the community of Mid Sussex has lost, two stalwarts of the community who each gave significant public service to their local areas. Edward Belsey served 2 terms as a district councillor in East Grinstead and longer as a member of East Grinstead Town Council, standing down from this council in 2019. He was, at his heart, we all knew, a great community man involved in a huge number of local organisations, charities and good causes. He was an incredibly kind and thoughtful man, I think the very definition of a gentleman. And he always had fantastic ideas. He would always come up with the latest idea that he'd had, or the latest thought that he'd had on an item of policy or something that the government should or shouldn't be doing. And the thing with Edward's ideas is they were almost always right. They were always something really inspired about what he had to say. And I know that he has always been a fantastic support to you, Chairman, and both you, Margaret, and John have our most sincere condolences on your loss and for your whole family. Prue Moore served 3 terms as a member of this council and indeed of Burgess Hill Town Council as well up until 2019. She served for a number of years as Cabinet Member for Leisure and Sustainability in this council, overseeing a big portfolio diligently and enthusiastically. She loved Burgess Hill and wanted the very best for its long-term future. And I think we will all know her as a very tenacious and determined lady, grounded in her community, incredibly hard-working, but also very pragmatic in trying to deliver the very best she could for what was for the task that was in front of her. And she was also someone who did a huge amount for disadvantaged residents without fanfare, without seeking any applause or credit, but just got on and looked after the people that she loved to represent. And I think it's quite right, Chairman, that we just begin our meeting as we did by just paying our respects to two people who've given a lot to our local community.
Thank you. Did anyone else wish to speak about Prue? Oh, Gary Marsh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Prue was a force of nature, as the leader just mentioned. Very good friend of mine. I just have to slightly change it. Her funeral was on Friday, sorry, but not tomorrow, it's Friday.
That's fine.
Okay. She's actually here again. She was... It's Prue. She's trying to interrupt me again, isn't she? As she always did. Yeah. She wasn't everybody's cup of tea, we know that. But as the leader said, her heart was in the right place. She loved Burgess Hill. She loved the district. And unfortunately, some people couldn't see beyond politics, unfortunately. There were some evil things said about Prue. In reality, it was not true. She was the most kindest, thoughtful, and we are reaping the rewards of what her vision was. And I've been speaking to Judy Holmes, and we do know that what she set in place, we are beginning to reap now as a district. And I don't really want to say much more because it's painful still, as you know. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh, very much. I'm going to now read the fire evacuation notice, please. The building fire alarm signal is a continuous two-tone alarm. On hearing the evacuation alarm, please leave the building by the nearest marked exit route. Follow the green signs to the assembly point, large staff car park opposite the entrance to the building. Anyone who cannot use the stairs will be helped by the officers present after other people have left. Please do not return to the building until it is safe to do so by an authorised officer. The whole of the council site is a no smoking area. Mobile phones must be switched to silent. Thank you. I'm now going to pass to the Vice Chairman to read the opening prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. O Lord, grant us courage to strive for what is right and good, courtesy to listen to those of different opinion, strengthen us through our difficulties and pressures, and guide us in our deliberations, so that we may act in the interest of all in our district, to the glory of your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I'm now going to move on to item 2 on the agenda, to receive questions from members of the public pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 9. There's one question received from Ms. de Lander Long. I'm going to read the question as she is unable to be with us. The question is, at the council meeting on November the 2nd, Councillor Hillier referred to the work being done by the Sussex Local Nature Partnership on what will be needed for local nature recovery in this district. How quickly will this work be factored into planning agreements with regard to the potential development areas that are outlined in the draft district plan? How will the council ensure the opportunity for preserving or creating essential wildlife corridors is not missed in relation to these sites? I'm going to ask for a response to the question by the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth and Net Zero, Councillor Steve Hillier.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, I'm grateful to the lady for a very good question. I and obviously everybody in the chamber agree with her that local nature recovery is important and also that we must take a holistic approach. There are many aspects which are key to delivering nature recovery, such as agreeing management and protection as part of determining planning applications and agreeing appropriate strategies for the management of any council-owned land which forms part of the network. The emerging draft district plan sets out a range of new and updated policies to help us achieve improvements to biodiversity. New policies include a requirement for biodiversity net gain, which is an improvement upon the EU's neutrality-only approach, and also for the protection and enhancement of green infrastructure, including local nature recovery networks. The weight that we can give to emerging planning policies when considering planning applications is set out in legislation. Unfortunately, in the early stages of plan making, only limited weight can be given to these policies, but as the plan nears adoption, this begins to improve. At this stage of our plan making, we can only encourage developers to take these new policy requirements into account. However, once the new district plan is adopted, all planning applications will be assessed against the updated policies. This would also include any site allocated in the site allocations DPD applying for permission after the district plan is adopted. Furthermore, as you know, the Council has agreed a sustainable economic strategy which set out a programme over the next 3 years to achieve our vision to balance social well-being, environmental protection and sustainable economic growth. This strategy sets out Mid Sussex District Council commitment to improve, manage and promote biodiversity and nature recovery. And there are a range of actions identified to help deliver this which go beyond the policies in the district plan, such as the commitment to refresh the Council's management plans for our countryside sites to ensure that they deliver maximum benefit in terms of biodiversity and environmental impact. Work on obtaining and mapping habitat data across the district is currently in progress and involves obtaining information from a wide range of sources such as the Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre and from ecology studies. This work is being informed by best practice, which is shared between the partner authorities within the Sussex Nature Partnership, of which Mid Sussex is a member. Once the data has been collected and mapped, it will inform a nature recovery network for Mid Sussex, which itself will inform an emerging local nature recovery strategy for Sussex, and which will include existing and potential wildlife corridors. Actually, I won't say the next bit because I think everybody in this chamber is well versed with the importance of wildlife corridors. So, working on the recovery strategy will progress through the early part of 2023 with the intention to inform the next iteration of the district plan review, which is at the Regulation 19. Finally, and I'm really proud to say, the draft district plan proposes biodiversity net gain of 10% on all sites, which is in line with the requirements set out within the Environmental Act. However, we will be seeking 20% on the 3 proposed significant sites, which are those at Burgess Hill, Sayers Common and Crabbit Park. I hope that answers her question and gives everyone the comfort this authority is committed to and on top of its environmental obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. There will be no supplementary question as Mr Lambert Long is not present. So I'm going to move on to item 3 to confirm minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 2nd of November 2022. I believe Councillor Marsh wishes to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think on page 11, just before the number 8, it was me who actually left the meeting, not Councillor Lee, unless you followed me out, Councillor Lee. And it was me definitely going at that time. Thank you.
Fine. Noted. Thank you. Members are asked to vote using the microphone touch screen. If you all vote now, please. Ask Jeff Weil to read the result, please.
Yes, Chairman, the votes are 39 yes, 0 no, and 2 abstentions, so those minutes are approved.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to item 4, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Members wishing to speak, please indicate by pressing the button under their name on the microphone. Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As I'll be referring to briefly in my report, I am a member of West Sussex County Council.
Thank you. I have no other councillors wishing to speak, so we're going to move on, please, to item 5, to consider any items that the chairman of the council agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. I'm now going to move on to item 6, the chairman's announcement. The recent engagements of both myself, the chairman, and the vice chairman are listed on the council's website and include the Mid Sussex Applauds Awards, which took place on the 20th of November at the South of England Showground, celebrating the achievements of local residents. This was really well attended and was really appreciated. Everyone there was really pleased with the awards and really enjoyed it, and I think it's something that we should do long into the future. I think it's an excellent thing that we have done, and I think it's the recipients were so pleased and so proud, and as were the people with them, and I just think it's excellent for the Mid Sussex to keep that applause awards going. The Chairman's Civic Service took place at St Swithers on the 4th of December. That was excellent. And we had an excellent choir, and it was really enjoyed by everyone who was there. I'm now going to move on to item 7, and before doing so, I would like to welcome, if I can just go back, we were out of step. I'd like to welcome the chairman of the Independent Remuneration Panel, Neil Gershon, who will present item 7 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the 6th year that I've been on the panel, and I think the last 5 as chairman of it. And I thought it may be helpful, as well as what is in the report, which I'm sure everybody has read, to just mention a couple of the themes that have been fairly consistent in the time that we have been meeting. There have been 2 particular themes. One has been the constant suggestions that we should try to do something more to encourage people who might be on lower incomes to become interested in standing as a councillor. And the other has very much been the work put in by councillors when looked at on a per hour basis. And we did some rough calculations on this. We assumed, for the sake of the argument, that councillors worked about, say, put 10 hours a week in. I'm sure that is an understatement. On that basis, that would equate to something around the minimum wage on an hourly basis. £10 an hour, 5,200 being the current basic allowance. Obviously, anyone can do the simple maths and work out that with putting in many more hours than that, it is indeed rather less than the minimum wage. Now, we know, of course, that it's not a wage. As such, it is an allowance intended to try and provide some compensation to councillors for their time they spend on council business. Those are not specifically in the report, but they have been, as I say, consistent themes across party more recently of the work and the representations that we have had over the years. As to the specific report for this year, we, as you would have seen from the report, have looked carefully at the effect that the reduction in the number of councillors would have in terms of workload. We're aware, as everybody is, of the rate of inflation, and concluded that whilst the rise that we propose may sound large, given that it is within budget, it did not seem to us unreasonable to propose it. That's the main recommendation we make. Otherwise, whatever is in the report about other matters are not particularly worth mentioning again, But our primary recommendation is for the increase to 5,700 for the basic allowance, which I would say, keeps us within plus or minus 5% of the average for West Sussex districts, which is where we have tried to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gershon. I'm now going to pass to the leader to propose his recommendations.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can I begin by thanking Mr. Gershon and the rest of the panel for their work and for the report that they have produced. I think the panel has worked very hard and well over time to get the allowances scheme into a sensible and evidence-based position, which is broadly understood and acknowledged, and so I thank them for that work. As members will see from the report, the panel has carefully considered recommendations for this year, particularly taking into account the reduction in councillors that there will be, which will result in a higher councillor to elector ratio and indeed inflationary implications. The panel has also acknowledged that we are due to undertake our annual review of the Constitution, and that is likely to have a slightly bigger bearing on that review is likely to be a little bit more significant this year, simply because we will have a smaller council from the new municipal term. And so I think it would be sensible, Chairman, for us to undertake the work on the Constitution review first and then come back to the panel's recommendations so that they can be considered in the round, in the knowledge of what we decide for the Constitution review. And we'll be able to do that in a decent timescale. So I'd like to propose, Chairman, that the Council firstly formally thanks the independent panel for its work and recommendations. Secondly, agrees that the scheme of members' allowances for the new council term should be decided following the work of the Constitution Review Group, so that any constitutional changes can be reflected in the scheme of members' allowances. Thirdly, agrees that the independent remuneration panel's report should be considered at the first available council meeting after a decision has been made on the Constitution Review. And fourthly, agrees the principle that the overall budget for members' allowances should not increase at the current time, which to clarify, we're talking about the next financial year for that, Chairman. I'll look for a seconder for that proposal.
Thank you. The proposal is seconded by Councillor Webster. Would you like to speak, Councillor Webster?
Thank you, Chairman. I think between Mr. Gershon and the leader, everything has been said and there's nothing more to be said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other councillor wish to speak on this subject before we take a vote on it? No? Councillor Gibson. Oh, Councillor Gibson. I apologise. Councillor Bennett, you were first. I was looking for hands.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question, really. Once the Constitutional Working Group has completed its deliberations and made a set of recommendations, what mechanism are we proposing for then reviewing the allowances for members? Is it going to go back to Mr. Gershon, or is it going to be decided by the members?
Councillor Ash-Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chairman. That probably depends on the implications and the decisions we make on the Constitution review, but there would be nothing to stop the Council, as part of the Constitution review, asking the independent panel to provide advice to the Council on what has been decided. And again, depending on what we decide, that may well be sensible for the Council to just consider some updated advice from the panel. But as I said, I think that is very much dependent on where the Constitution Review Group gets to and what's recommended, Chairman. So decision for that time.
Thank you, Councillor Ash-Edwards. Councillor Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to thank the Chairman and the whole Remuneration Committee for listening to my ideas about the way that it perhaps should be restructured. I think that we should be clear on the point here that we're talking about working with no increase on an overall bill for 54 councillors while dropping to 48. So effectively that's a redistribution of 12.5% across the remaining councillors in the next round. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other councillors wishing to speak. We are going to go to the vote. Please vote on the screens in front of you, please.
Point of order, if I may.
Yes,
Are we voting on the amendment or on the original motion, please?
we're voting on the motion read by the leader.
No. Councillor, yeah, that's right.
May I clarify, Chairman?
Please.
The wording moved by the leader is the substantive motion. It differs from the printed version that you had, but it is nevertheless a substantive motion and not an amendment. So you're voting on Councillor Ash Edwards' substantive motion as he read out to the meeting just a few minutes ago.
Okay. Would you be good enough to read the result?
Thank you, Chairman. The votes have all been gathered now. The votes in favour are 40, the votes against are 0, and there's one abstention, so that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Just wait while Mr. Gershom leaves the chamber. Thank you very much, Mr. Gershom. Thank you. Now moving on to item 8 of the agenda, the council tax base 2023 to 2024, which is proposed by Councillor Ash Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members will know this is the formal report we have in December of each year to formally set the tax base ahead of the budget setting process. So I formally propose that we approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. This motion is seconded by Councillor Percy. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this item on the agenda? No. We have none? No. I'm going to state the recommendations being voted on for the benefit of members and viewers and listeners. The full recommendation on page 1 of the separate document. Council is recommended to agree that, pursuant to the Assistant Director Corporate Resources report and in accordance with the local authorities' calculation of tax base, Amendment England Regulations 2003, the amounts calculated by Mid Sussex District Council as its tax base for the whole year of the year 2023 to 2024 shall be 64.664.1, and for each parish year for the year 2023 to 2024 shall be as detailed in the table contained in the report. If members, I have no members wishing to speak, so would we please go straight to the vote using your touch microphone screen. I'll ask Jeff Wild to read the result, please.
Yes, Chairman, the vote is unanimous in favour, so that item is carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to move on to item 9, the Statement of Gambling Policy, which is proposed by Councillor Anthea Lee and seconded by Councillor Webster, pages 39 to 76 of your documents. Councillor Lee.
Council is required to review the Statement of Principles of Gambling Policy every 3 years. Mid Sussex last review of this policy took place in 2018 and was adopted at Council in January of 2019. This current review was slightly delayed due to COVID, but the draft policy was unanimously endorsed at scrutiny in September, and the draft policy then went out to public consultation. The policy reflects the statutory, regulatory and legislative guidance which has 3 main objectives for protecting the public. It is to prevent gambling from being a source of crime or disorder or being used to support crime. It ensures that gambling is conducted in a fair and open manner, and the protecting of children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited. So Council this evening is asked to approve the Statement of Principles stated at Appendix 1 and from implementation to begin on the 1st of January 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. And Councillor Webster, you're seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak? Or reserve your right?
I'd like to reserve my right, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Have I got any councillor that wishes to speak on this item? No. I see none. So Councillor Webster, do you wish to add anything to this?
No, Chairman, and
Yeah.
I'm rapidly crossing out everything that I had intended saying tonight.
Okay, I'm going to state the recommendations being voted on for the benefit of members and viewers and listeners. The full recommendation is on page 39. Council is recommended to approve the Statement of Principles, Gambling Act, policy at Appendix 1 for the implementation on 1st of January 2023. Would you members like to vote on this motion using your microphone touch screens? Thank you very much. Jeff, would you like to?
Chairman, that vote is unanimous again in support of the motion, so that's carried.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'm now moving on to item 10, the recommendation from the Cabinet held on the 21st of November 2022, pages 77 to 78 of your agenda. This item is proposed by Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards. Ash Edwards. Sorry.
It's all right, Chairman, I answered to most things. I formally propose the recommendations. As members will see, the current inflationary picture is having quite a significant effect on the Council's financial position, both on the revenue budget and in terms of delivering capital projects. And members will see the kind of high-level figures in the summary of the report for themselves, but very, very significant impacts. Helped slightly in the current year by the fact that there is a positive impact from improved treasury management income as a result of rising interest rates. And so in the current financial year, at least, those things broadly offset each other. That may not fully be the case going forward, which we'll come to in due course as part of our budget setting process for next year. But for now, that's roughly where we've got the budget to. And I think that principle, which we're asking Council to agree, that essentially we treat the current economic challenge as two sides of the same coin, higher costs, but higher interest income. I think that is the right approach for us to be taking at the moment, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsey, you're seconding this motion. Do you wish to speak or reserve your right?
Thank you, Chairman. I reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any councillors wishing to speak on this motion? No. I see none. So I'm going to state the recommendations being voted on. Apologies. Councillor Belsey, do you wish to add anything to this?
I'm happy to move to the vote, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to state the recommendations being voted on for the benefit of members and viewers and listeners. The full recommendation is on page 77. That council approve that £11,510 received from DLUHC in respect of rough sleeper accommodation programme grant be transferred to specific reserve as detailed in paragraph 27 of the Cabinet report. 2, that 82,500 received from the Home Office in respect of dispersal of asylum seekers grant be transferred to specific reserve as detailed in paragraph 28 of the Cabinet report. Item 3, that 5,200 received from DLUHC in respect of new burdens grant for temporary pavement licensing be transferred to specific reserve as detailed in paragraph 29 of the Cabinet report. Item 4, that £280,465 received from UK Health Security Agency in respect of track and trace self-isolation administration grant be transferred to specific reserves as detailed in paragraph 30 of the Cabinet report. Item 5, that 61,542 received from DLUHC for new burdens council tax rebate scheme be transferred to specific reserves as detailed in paragraph 31 of the Cabinet report. Item 6, the variations of the capital programme contained in table 4 of the Cabinet report in accordance with the Council's Financial Procedure Rule B3. Item 7, be to approve the use of the projected increase of £1,194,000 for Treasury management income to finance the revenue budget, reducing the projected revenue overspend year-end position to 41,000. Members,
Well done.
members, please use your screen to vote, please, on this issue. Thank you. Jeff, would you be good enough to read the result, please?
Yes, Chairman, again, it's a unanimous vote in support of the item, so that is carried.
Thank you. I'm now moving on to item 11, which is the appointment of a monitoring officer, pages 79 to 80 of your agenda. Before we proceed, I would like to welcome Rachel Jarvis, the Council's Select Section 151 officer, whom Council recently appointed. I would like to stand up and everybody will then recognise you. Okay, welcome Rachel. I would also like to welcome Kevin Toogood, Assistant Director, Legal and Democratic Service. Would you like to stand up? Thank you very much. I now have to ask you, Kevin, to leave the meeting, please. I've asked Kevin to leave while the Council debates the appointment of the monitoring officer, which is being proposed by Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As members will recall, when we appointed Mr Wilde as the interim monitoring officer, Mr Toogood has now taken up position as Assistant Director for Legal and Democratic Services, and so Council is asked to formally confirm his appointment as monitoring officer with effect from the 16th of January 2013. I'm happy to propose that, Chairman.
Thank you. This motion is seconded by Councillor Webster. Do you wish to speak?
Reserve my right, Chairman.
You reserve your mic. Do I have any questions or comments from any councillor on this subject? No? I see none. I'm going to state the recommendations being voted on for the benefit of members, viewers and listeners. The full recommendation is on page 79. The Council has recommended to agree the designation of A. Kevin Toogood as the Council's monitoring officer with effect from the 16th of January 2023. Members, please vote on this issue. Apologise, Councillor Webster, did you want to... You're happy to say that?
Out, Chairman.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. So please, members, vote using their touch screen. Thank you. Done? Geez, yeah.
What is the problem? Somebody hasn't voted.
Yours hasn't registered. If you can press it until it goes grey.
Press it again.
That's free time. Could we please have the result? I think
Yes,
it's
Chairman, that again is a unanimous vote in favour, so that matter is carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to item 12, to receive the leader's report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And firstly, I should say I'll do my very best to ensure Councillor Webster doesn't have to cross anything further out. Also, Chairman, apologies from Councillor Salisbury this evening, and so I'm happy to take any questions on his portfolio, and I've got a couple of matters relating to his portfolio to report in any event. Firstly, Chairman, I'll open with some good news. Members may recall a little bit earlier in the year, I made reference in a report to the investment plan that the Council had submitted to the Government's UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund is the UK replacement for former EU regional development funding that Mid Sussex got very little of. I'm very pleased to say that the Council's investment plan has been accepted by the Government, and this will unlock £1 million of funding over the next 3-year period. Members may recall that the investment plan was driven by investing in community in place through our Parks Investment Programme and the programme of community hubs that we want to develop across the district, as well as funding investment with other councils across West Sussex in the Think Futures NEAT project to support young people in our community who are not in education, employment or training. Most of the funding, Chairman, is weighted towards the latter part of those 3 years, and so members will see that the projects to be funded by the Shared Prosperity Fund building up over the next 2 to 3 years. But I think that's a really good investment in the district and boost for the projects that we want to deliver locally. Secondly, members will know that the district plan consultation continues and does so until the 19th of December. Officers from the planning policy team have been attending the staffed exhibitions across the district to engage with residents, and I know a number of members have attended those and to provide an opportunity for the public to ask questions and understand more about what is in the draft district plan review. And I would encourage members to ensure that local communities respond to the consultation to ensure that we've got the very best set of responses from our local communities with which we can shape our future planning work. And that is even more important, Chairman, given the announcements made earlier this week by the Secretary of State in relation to reforms the government wants to bring forward to the planning system. Many of those reforms, I should be clear about at the beginning are reforms that this council and many other councils and our MPs have called for and have lobbied for, so I welcome the direction of travel that the government is taking, and members will recall the letter I wrote on behalf of the council earlier in the year calling for changes to the planning system. The government's intending on publishing a consultation on changes to the National Planning Policy Framework. We understand that that's due to be published before Christmas, and the government wants to get that consultation completed into the new year. And so we will slightly need to wait for that consultation to properly understand the detail of how the changes will affect us. But what we do know is the government has said that it wants to make housing numbers a starting point for councils to plan from and introduce greater flexibility into the system to evidence local conditions, local circumstances, rather than being a top-down mandatory requirement. Some members would in fact recall that that used to be the case, and many an hour was spent arguing, not always in Mid Sussex's ultimate benefit, over what the housing number should be at a public examination. So I think a level of caution needed over exactly where that might end up until we know the exact detail about what the considerations will and won't be. I think more importantly for us, Chairman, the government has reaffirmed the importance of having an up-to-date local plan because it has stated that it intends to remove the requirement for a council to have a 5-year housing land supply where a council's local plan is up to date. And that's a reform that I think we would all welcome in order to reduce the ability of developers to game the system and try and push through speculative developments that are not in agreed local plans. Of course, the flip side to that is it means we have to have an up-to-date local plan, and members will know that our plan, our current district plan, will go out of date next year, which is why having that up-to-date local plan is so important and actually will strengthen as a result of these changes. And a third change that I think is also potentially significant, Chairman, is the government intends to instruct the Planning Inspectorate to not override sensible local decision-making that reflects local circumstances. Again, we'll need to see the detail of that, but I think that rebalancing of the relationship, as the government has described it, between councils and the Planning Inspectorate is something that we would all welcome. I think that's very, very positive indeed. Members will, of course, and local communities will, of course, want to know what the implication is for our district plan, and that's why I said it's so important that our communities respond to the consultation. We are in a position, Chairman, where we can, where the district plan will evolve, it always does, through the different consultation stages, and so the next iteration of the district plan review will be able to take into account whatever changes the government does introduce through changes to the NPPF or indeed through the legislation. Of course, those changes won't take effect overnight. The government will need to consult and bring them into effect. And of course, by having the best possible set of consultation responses, this council, when it comes back to the district plan ahead of the Regulation 19 stage, will be able to make the best possible decisions about how we use some of the reforms that the government has said it wants to bring in, whilst ensuring that we do so in an evidence-based manner. So, Chairman, I think positive news, but I think a level of caution needed about seeing the detail, understanding that the housing targets will still be the starting point and there will need to be clear evidence around the reasons for varying from them, and again reinforcing, Chairman, the absolute importance of having an up-to-date local plan. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members, so that all members who wish to do so have adequate opportunity to pose a question and not a statement, ask for your cooperation in putting no more than 3 questions per member to the leader. I have 2 councillors wishing to speak. The first is Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. There is a question coming. Wait for it. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the leader and indeed our MPs, 3 of them,
Andrew Griffith, Mims Davis and Jeremy Quinn, for the considerable work that they have done in lobbying for the changes that have come along.
Yeah.
In your statements, in the leaders' statements today and Mims Davis's statements today, both talk about balance. Getting the balance right between housing needs and the constraints on the environment. Getting the balance right between housing needs and community wishes. That balance is important. I think both the leader and our MP, Mims Davis, have emphasised that. What we don't have, apart from telephone calls coming in, is the details on this at the moment. As the leader said, we have broad brush stuff, but the broad brush paints a significant step in the right direction. So I guess it's too early, Chairman, to ask for definite commitments on how Mid Sussex will progress this. But you will be aware, members will be aware of the considerable development that is proposed in my community, in my ward, and in the neighbouring community, especially in Albourne. Development that would significantly change those settlements, more than doubling the size of those settlements. And indeed, I'm coming to the question, Chairman. I'm not making a statement. Those communities, well, it's a statement leading up to a question. Have patience. Those communities have considerable, grave concerns. So, whilst, as I said, it's probably too early to ask for definite commitments, can the leader at least make a commitment that to establish what is the right balance in this new regime, whatever it may be, that the council will at least engage with the communities, engage with the parish councils in constructive, continuous and open dialogue to establish just what is the right balance for the benefit of those communities. Thank you, Chairman. Took a long time getting there, but we got a question.
That is true. Leader.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I'd certainly endorse Councillor Trumbull's comments about the role that our MPs have played, and I think that that very consistent lobbying and the work we've done jointly between ourselves as a council and our MPs has been very beneficial in terms of making sure that government understands some of the challenges we have and what we need in terms of how the system could work better, because I think most people agree, Chairman, that the system could work better. And Councillor Trumbull was also right to refer to that balance, because Mid Sussex does not shirk its responsibilities on housing. We are not a NIMBY council. We have taken responsible action collectively as a council over a number of years now to ensure that we do have the homes that people need to live in, because that's what we're ultimately talking about, places where people are going to live and make the most of their lives. But Councillor Trumbull is quite right to highlight that there is a balance needed between that housing need that we know exists, the constraints that we know exist in the district, and indeed the views of our current community. I've said before that we need to recognise that people want to live in our area, but we also need to protect the reasons why people want to live in our area. In terms of how we go forward, I can certainly give Councillor Trumbull the commitment that we will engage with parishes. We've been doing so through the consultation process and will continue to do so. And so no change on that perspective, because I think it's really important as we go forward into a slightly new environment that we do all we can to understand local views and work with our communities. I think Councillor Trumbull's right to say it is a bit too early to set out exactly the next steps. I think we do need to see the consultation draft of the MPPF. But I think in terms of broad brush, I think the direction we need to go into is let's get the consultation finished on the district plan review, understand what the response to those proposals is, understand what the mechanisms are going to be from the government's point of view in terms of assessing housing needs and making some of these decisions, and then we'll clearly need an evidence-based approach to how we take that forward, where we can use flexibilities, where we can evolve the plan before its next iteration, and clearly we'll want to involve members in that work as we go forward, Chairman. And when we've got the proposals on the MPPF, of course, we'll also want to respond to the consultation.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go to Councillor Adams.
Well, I thought I was going to have a bad day yesterday, but I had a great day because on the front of the Daily Telegraph was Sunak abandons housing targets. I thought, what a result. What a result. We could have abandoned the development that's been put in for the land at Bolney, which is on Greenfield site. We could also amend completely and get rid of 50% of Albourne's numbers in the Reeds Lane Sayers Common. And then both those things, I think we should seriously look at these numbers in light of the Secretary of State's statement that top-down housing targets are now advisory. How will this change the numbers required in Bolney Ward?
Leader, would you kindly respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Adams is right to represent her local communities forcefully, and I'd encourage local residents that she refers to respond to the consultation. In terms of how we look at the targets, I do think we need to look at the details in the MPPF consultation, because one of the key things we'll need to address is that the Secretary of State has said that the targets will be a starting point. And so we'll need to understand exactly what the mechanism will be to vary from that. Certainly as a council, we've made the point before that if you use more up-to-date population projections, for example, you get a different, slightly lower target, more in keeping with the evidence. And so, of course, we will want to explore as a council the evidence base for that, to have a more up-to-date target which would release some of the pressure on our numbers, and of course we'll then be able to look at in greater detail the consultation responses and the views of local people about different sets of proposals. So I think let's wait for the consultation on the MPPF, but I think we will then want to work as a council to look at what the evidence suggests around the constraints, what the real number of houses should be for our district, and go forward as follows.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask Councillor Gibson to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I find for the second meeting I've got to support Mr Gove, which I find to be a less than happy experience, but councillors will remember that the last meeting I warmly thanked him for his the comment about the need to involve communities at an early stage, and I think that's prior to a Regulation 18 submission, consultation, when all we're doing is telling them what this council's decided. I note that since then, he's now embraced the idea that councils that are ahead on their delivery targets should have more freedom, and we're at 125%, 500 homes up on where we should be on our delivery target. And also now he's talking about capacity and local needs. And of course our district plan highlights that we can't build in the AONB, we can't build in the South Downs National Park, so we have to push everything into these areas in the middle and in the northern area. And at this point I guess that I should say, yes, I am county councillor for a swathe up in the north, and maybe I should just declare that at this moment. Finally, we've got a very good housing land supply at the moment, 5-year, from the vast number that we approved in the DPD. We should be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply through until 2027 if we actually get the developers to build out the things that we've approved. And gosh, we'd want to do that, wouldn't we? So now I come to the way forward that we should take as we bring back the Regulation 18 results. And I'd like to praise the officers for the work that they've done on the policies. And I certainly want to see those policies brought forward at the earliest possible opportunity. So I think that part of the consultation should proceed rapidly to Regulation 19 and go forward, because all those nice things about biodiversity, net gain, and the rest of it need to be what we're going to ask developers to do now, immediately.
Councillor Gibson, do you have a question?
We're heading to the question, yes, like Councillor
Could we
Trumbull.
head a little
I've
faster?
proved a good student to Councillor Trumbull. So, I'm less certain on the site selection, and I would like to suggest that, therefore, we split the two, as indeed it was taken to scrutiny committee. We advance the policies, but we revisit the site selection exercise, and indeed we look to take a strategic approach in the northern area, similar to what we've done in Burgess Hill, which of course I've always applauded, where we are, by my estimates, about to see 4,000 houses going in alongside the A264 corridor.
Thank you. Can I ask the leader to respond, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm delighted to hear that Councillor Gibson's continued love affair with the Secretary of State is developing, and welcome the political journey that it sounds like he might be on. Who knows? I suspect not. So just to address some of those points, I think the core point that Councillor Gibson made in terms of splitting the policies and the sites at Regulation 19, that isn't possible because you have to take a complete plan to Regulation 19, because that is the final plan for consultation ahead of it going to the planning inspector for examination. So it isn't possible to divorce the two. You have to, you have to make your decision, warts and all, policies and sites collectively. And actually, the two can't be divorced from a planning point of view either, because of course the policies in terms of spatial strategy, housing locations, and the site, do need to mesh together. So I think there is a difference between taking different parts of the document to different scrutiny meetings to make those meetings, better for members in terms of the volume of paperwork, and actually doing them as separate decisions. I don't think we can do that. And just on the 5-year land supply point, it's not the case that we have a 5-year land supply until 2027. The 5-year land supply begins to run out earlier than that, because of course until any changes take effect and until the council has a different housing number through examination being adopted and accepted, actually the numbers still are measured against the standard methodology. So that's why I think we need to be really careful on the detail of this, because actually this will be a longer process, because the government will need to make the changes and we will need to get a plan through the process and adopted. And until we do, we run the risk of not having a 5-year land supply and not having an up-to-date plan, which is why we'll need to consider the changes, we'll need to carefully work on the next steps, but we mustn't let up in terms of actually moving the work forward, Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Eggleston, do you have a question?
I do, Chairman, thank you. My first question, so no speeches, is on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Could the leader share the detail of how that £1 million is being spread across the district to all members? The second question is related to more investment money that we're hoping to get, and we know that the government is due to announce the results of the second Levelling Up Fund bid by the end of this year, and I just wondered whether the leader knew whether that was going to be an early Christmas present or a celebration on New Year's Eve, or potentially neither. So if he'd had any further feedback on that. The third question was related to the announcement on the revisions to the MPPF and how housing numbers are allocated. And I take the leader's point, but listening to other members, I'm trying to find a way of phrasing this as a question without launching into a statement, but I'm guessing that the jeopardy that we run in terms of the existing regulation 18 and 19 is that potentially at some stage during that process, the evidence and the legal framework could change such that we as a district council can look at a different number,
potentially a lower number. And so what mechanism would we have as a district council to change horses whilst we're going through the regulation 18 and 19 process, so that we come up with a housing number which might be more acceptable to the communities of Mid Sussex? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. The leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Eggleston, for those questions. On the first, yes, we'll make sure we put the detail of the UK SPF in MIS for members. Certainly can do that. On the Levelling Up Fund, no greater indication on timescales than what's been publicly announced from the government, which is before Christmas. And with our MP, Mims Davis, we continue to lobby and push the case for the investment that we want to see in Burgess Hill Town Centre. And on the MPPF, I understand Councillor Eggleston's question, and we need to be really careful about how we move forward post Regulation 18. I actually think we're in quite a good place because there's quite a lot of work that our planning policy officers will have to do after Regulation 18 in terms of looking at all the consultation responses, pulling the themes together, doing that analysis, and inevitably, some of the consultation responses will result in further work needing to be done to look at the various issues that have been raised. So actually that will happen alongside what the government's doing on changes to the MPPF. So actually we will get to a point, I suspect, in relatively good alignment, that we have a decent amount of certainty about what the new system will look like, and our planning policy team will have done the analysis on the Reg 18 consultation. And so at that point, we will be able to work out what we do next in terms of preparing for the Regulation 19. And it would certainly be my view that we don't go ahead with a Regulation 19 consultation until we've done that and we've got real clarity about how best to move forward. Because, of course, once you've gone down the Regulation 19 route, you are into a trajectory of heading to an examination. And what we need to be really careful about is that any changes we want to make are really clearly evidenced and can be supported at an examination, given that the development industry will not want to see councils changing housing targets from the standard method, and will, I would suggest, commits very significant resources to try and obstruct that. So we need to make sure that any decisions we do make are really clearly evidenced and justified. So I think the timescales can work for us, and we'll continue to be really careful in terms of the next steps to ensure that we can take advantage of the reforms. I would like us personally to be one of the first councils to adopt a plan under the new system. I think that's a good place to aim for, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jackson, please.
Right, thank you, Chairman. I agree with the councillor from Bolney. As in my ward, Sayers Common, a large number of houses are in the district plan review, and it's not very popular, understandably, with the local residents, and I think the parish councils in that area are going to make strong representation under the consultation. But my particular question relates to the fact that there are a large number, over 2,000 people on the housing waiting list, and therefore we do need to have affordable housing or social housing to meet that need. And if you're going to have less market housing, the present 30% of a development may not be enough to satisfy the need for low-cost housing or affordable housing. So will that be something obviously we need to address when we get the further details on how the housing numbers were going to be calculated in terms of making sure we've got enough affordable housing?
Thank you. The leader.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Again, I'd say to Councillor Jackson, I encourage his residents to respond to the consultation and make sure all of those points are in so that they can be considered. Councillor Jackson makes a very good point around people who are in need of affordable housing in our district, which is something that's not going to go away, not going to reduce, because we live in an expensive part of the country, and that's part of the balance that we will have to undertake that Councillor Trumbull referred to earlier, because of course if you deliver fewer homes, there are fewer places for people to live, and that will in the long run have an impact on affordability. So we will need to be very careful, I think, in terms of how we move forward and make responsible decisions for our community as a whole. We'll clearly need to keep all of the policies, including the one around affordable housing, under review. What I would just say is that the position, the long-standing position this council has in terms of 30% affordable housing is well evidenced and justified in terms of deliverability. Because what we see too often in councils that have higher targets, percentage targets, is they don't actually deliver them. And people can't live in a policy, people can't live in a target. And so if you have a target that is so high that it doesn't actually get delivered from a viability point of view, you actually get fewer affordable homes being delivered. So I think caution needed on that, but we do need to make sure that enough homes get built in our district to meet the needs of people who need affordable homes.
Thank you. We have Councillor Alison Bennett, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would first of all like to endorse and support the comments made by my fellow ward members, Councillor Trumbull and Councillor Jackson. I have two questions. One is whether the leader thinks there's enough time if, as he says, the district plan goes out of date next year, I think you said, and we need to wait for clarity before moving to Regulation 19. Are we going to run the risk of the plan going out of date and speculative development? And the second question is that tonight you've encouraged councillors to sort of encourage their residents to take part in the current Regulation 18 consultation. What resources are available to the council, to councillors from this council to support with that? It strikes me that until Mr Gove made his announcements this week, the heavy lifting on publicising the Regulation 18 consultation was being done by parish councils, by campaign groups like LAMS, by local societies like the Hurst Pierpoint Society, and by political parties like my own. It seems to have changed this week in light of these announcements.
The leader wishes to respond.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So on Councillor Bennett's first question, the policy requirement in the current district plan, if I remember it rightly, is that we have to submit the plan, a reviewed plan to the Secretary of State for examination in 2023. I'm guessing in order to say that's correct. So that's what we're committed to in terms of the current policy. And so I would have thought, it's reasonable to be able to do that. I hope that won't come back to bite me, but I think that will be reasonable to do, and so that must be our goal, to ensure that we keep the plan up to date. In terms of the consultation, I don't think anything's changed. This council has publicised the consultation through the channels that it does have. Officers have done a number of manned exhibitions in the communities most impacted by the proposals, and I think there is a good level of understanding in the community. Councillor Bennett referred to some of the work the parish councils and local groups are doing. So I think the information is there, and I would just encourage people to get those responses in by the 19th, but I'm sure that our communications team will also be able to do some final publicity as we head into the last couple of weeks of the consultation, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move on to item 13 on the agenda, the report of Cabinet members, including questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.1. Again, as the leader has said, the Cabinet member for Planning sends his apologies as he is not able to attend the meeting. He will present his report at the next meeting. So I'm now passing to the Deputy Leader, Councillor John Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick update just on the food waste trial. Continues to go well with over 84% of households participating. Just to let everyone know, the early signs are that our recycling rates in those trial areas are up to 68% from percentages in the mid-40s, which is as good as I think we could have hoped for. That excludes garden waste from the calculations. And a more detailed survey to residents will be undertaken in the new year to understand how participants have felt about the trial so far. Just did want to touch on my estate's hat on, just thanking councillors and residents and businesses who contacted me about flooding recently. Of course, it's very distressing for residents and businesses affected. The council has roles as a district authority and landowner and is working to do what it can regarding alleviating flooding. Recent floodings largely due to rainfalls reaching a volume and intensity that exceeded all the relevant drainage systems capacities, but I did want to reassure everyone that the council does have a flood risk and drainage team who are experts in these often very complex issues, who investigate flooding situations and who are advising as to what remedial works or mitigations may prove necessary. And finally, I just wanted to say, I'm pleased to say that the old toilet block at the Orchards, the demolishment has started, and that work will start on the new modern and improved facility next week. I know many residents will look forward to the reopening, and I believe Councillor Cromie may touch on this later in terms of the comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. I see no questions, so I'm going to pass on to the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth and Net Zero, Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Right, I'll just run through this quickly. So our Micro Business Grants Fund, which is a little over 71,000, has already allocated 37,000. And there is a grants panel next week, which has the potential to allocate the rest if all of the applications are approved. However, regardless of the outcomes of the grants panel, it is possible that one or more applicants may decide to shelve their project, thus releasing unspent funds. So if any councillor requires information or clarification to enable them to support one of their local businesses, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Our range of skills support for businesses continues, and the current emphasis will be on digital skills. In partnership with West Sussex County Council, a new scheme will commence in January and will include pop-up information hubs, road shows, and the appointment of 3 West Sussex businesses as digital skills ambassadors to support delivery of the programme. Again, please don't hesitate to ask outside of this meeting if you wish any further information. In relation to our desire to support the economy towards achieving net zero, West Sussex County Council will be appointing a supplier this side of Christmas to provide guidance and support to businesses. In October, I reported on the very successful London launch of our inward investment opportunity Mid Sussex and the Sustainable Economic Strategy, and I'm delighted to say that an equally successful local launch was held at Edwards Vacuum in Burgess Hill a few weeks back. I'm very grateful to all that attended and to Edwards for providing excellent facilities and to our officers for their work. And again, our efforts on behalf of the local economy were incredibly well received by local businesses and the people there, as were plaudits for our planning work and this district council as a whole. We shall continue the promotion of the inward investment OMS through newsletters and the specific social media channels which have now attracted over 340 followers. The Shop App initiative is now live across the whole of Mid Sussex following the final launch in East Grinstead a short while back, and early indications in terms of the number of businesses registered and the volume of products listed are extremely positive. And in Q1 of next year, we should have some detailed analysis of its impact once all locations have been trading for over 3 months. And finally, as members may be aware, we are supporting a range of initiatives around energy consumption and green homes grants to assist our residents. And they're too varied to go into here, but I would urge members to familiarise themselves with information on our website and which they can point residents to. So if you go to the cost of living support webpage on the Mid Sussex website, the various schemes are located under the heating and warmth and energy support drop-downs. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Councillor Marsh, you have a question for Councillor Hillier.
I do, Madam Chairman. Though I applaud the move towards digital and everything that goes with it, I will support that. But can I make a plea on the older generation, as we're all becoming older, there are not all of us, well I am, but not everybody knows how to use a computer, and you've just mentioned it in your very last statement about if they go to our website and if they do this and they do that, a lot of people don't have computers. So it's how we deal with that. And I really don't, I'm making a plea across the whole district, not just my ward, because I know there's a lot of people in my ward who don't have computers. Don't leave them behind. Find a way of reaching out to those people. If it's just through the Mid Sussex Matters, don't give up the telephone, because I think a lot of people are worried about, we've got to do parks, open spaces, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. A telephone call to somebody can actually help, and it breaks that monotony of, isolation. I'm not being able to use anything anymore. I'm now worthless. So please don't forget the people who haven't got the digital technology. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hillier, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, and it's a really good point. Actually, it happened today. I spent a long time on a resident who rang me. It was actually in relation to a speeding offence, but he doesn't have a home computer. And trying to access a course in order to avoid the points, etc., without a computer at home, it was just almost impossible. So you're absolutely right. We must ensure that in our rush to embrace digital stuff, that we have other channels. And I know I will have a conversation with my colleague, Councillor Cromie in Communications, to pick up that point about making sure that, and I imagine it'll be Mid Sussex Matters, that we do promote that stuff. In terms of the specific digital business stuff, in terms of businesses, that's going to be a lot around skilling them up, around using social media to launch their products. But I think, yes, we should remind them that even their customers don't all have computers. So, point well made. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson, do you have a question for Councillor Hillier?
Certainly do, Madam Chairman, but I would like just to thank him for his written answer to my question on Scope 3 emissions last time, and to agree with him that it was a very good event that we had on that was arranged on the economic strategy launch, a good opportunity to talk to leading businesses in the district, and it was a shame that perhaps more councillors weren't there. It's led me on to think about what should be the, if you like, the core of the science park, which of course we're pressing forward in Burgess Hill. It's a question that I've asked before, and I just wondered, against the background about the government's spending to balance out our eviction, it would seem, from Horizon 2020 and the money which is coming into R&D, whether or not any thought was going into whether or not we could bid for a catapult centre. Thank you.
Councillor Hillier?
I couldn't comment on that. I would like to provide a written answer when I've consulted with officers. But in principle, you know, nothing's in and nothing's out of the science park. It's a fantastic opportunity. As people know, it's there to potentially provide up to 4,500 jobs. We want to be very much R&D focused, and obviously that's why we're hoping for a presence of both universities on site. With the detail, I couldn't give you any more than that. And the catapult is something that's over my head at the moment. I will find out.
Thank you. Councillor Trumbull, do you have a question?
Of course I have a question, Chairman. I'm surprised you asked. The Cabinet member outlined a fascinating array of activities that his team are involved in. And no doubt the officers are running at full tilt on actioning that. Could I just ask, if there are individual initiatives from, say, a parish or a town, Burgess Hill, for instance, that they wanted to progress on an economic development front, would the team be in a position to help them on that and devote resource to that? Thank you.
Councillor Hillier?
And the short answer is yes. The team have very good links with all the parishes and lots of consultations, and they work closely with them. And so in terms of officer time, that's already committed and will continue to be committed to supporting local communities such as that. In terms of grants and funding, that obviously is on a case-by-case basis. So hopefully that gives you the reassurance that the answer is yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. I'm now going to move on to the Cabinet Member for Community, Councillor Webster. Please remain seated.
Thank you, Chairman. Having read the minutes of the last council, I realised I was particularly talkative. So I'm going to attempt to be a bit more concise tonight. And one of the things that I do want to just flag up is that at the scrutiny committee that Councillor Lee spoke about, there was a question asked about lottery tickets being on sale in the district. And it's very important for councillors to know that that particular aspect of gambling, if you want to call it, is regulated by the Gambling Commission, not Mid Sussex District Council. So if anybody does see any of that sort of thing going on illegally or to underage children or so on, they need to know where to report it to. And I want to draw attention to the availability again of the Community Connections directory. Although it's badged for older people, it does contain a lot of information that would be of use and of value to younger people as well. On Friday night, I attended the lovely new King's Weald Community Centre in Burgess Hill, and I helped them celebrate the beginning of their first Christmas season, which was a very pleasant event. And I look forward to the opening of the new Stone Quarry facility in the coming weeks. And there are, of course, a number of other community facilities which are being either in the concept planning phase, consultation, or construction, at a time when most councils are, in fact, reducing spending due to cost pressures. And we're in that fortunate position that we're able to continue to invest in our communities in those ways. And finally, I want to thank the councillors who rang into the BBC Sussex radio show when I was interviewed regarding the Public Space Protection Order extension and broadening of its footprint. And absolutely finally, Chairman, I want to wish our emergency services and council colleagues a happy Christmas. And for those of other faiths or no faith, I hope you have a safe and happy time with your family and friends. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Webster. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, can I ask the Cabinet member, the new NHS integrated care boards have now been in existence for 5 months. Has this council at political and also particularly officer level had any meaningful discussions, introductions with their new officers? And I speak on the background of obviously with the district plan consultation at the moment, many members of the public are quite concerned about the infrastructure, particularly with the NHS and future provision giving our housing targets. Thank you.
Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. At this point, I should declare that I do work in the NHS 2.5 days of the week, and certainly some senior members of the NHS have attended the last Mid Sussex Partnership Board meeting, where there was a very good interaction and there was an opportunity for people to talk about the concerns that they have. I, in fact, attended the launch of the Integrated Care Board, and I've had several other meetings with members of the ICB, and just a couple of weeks ago I did send an email, because what I would very much like to do is arrange for somebody from the ICB to come and talk to councillors in a training session. Of course, the training opportunities between now and next May are few, but I would very much like that to happen. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. And now moving on to Cabinet Member for Leisure and Parking, Councillor Ruth Demir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief because we want to get away for Christmas, don't we? Leisure centres. The visits to our 3 leisure centres have continued to increase, although, of course, with the holidays over, those numbers aren't quite as high as they were, as we saw in the summer, but we're still really on course to be well in excess of our targets that we set ourselves. This means that income is steadily increasing. However, utility expenditure continues to remain well above our forecasts, which is impacting the overall financial position. Although I did report before, PV panels and the LED replacements will all be in situ to help with this early in the next financial year. And also, the centres have reduced their own energy consumption by over 21%, so every little helps. On car parking, as I also reported, our income is still slightly lower than 2019, but against our post-COVID targets has been much better than we expected. In fact, it's 5% above our own forecast. And it's also good to see that the cashless pay and display transactions are at 63%. I totally agree with Councillor Marsh, and every one of our car parks still has something I can put my pounds in. As you all know, there are 52 charging points now across the district. As you know, the Cypress Road in Burgess Hill have been delayed because of lease hiccups. But once the legalities are completed, it's hoped that that installation will be completed before the end of this year, calendar year. While those planned for Mount Modnoddy and the Wilderness are also due soon, with evaluations being carried out in King Street and Haywoods Road. The public consultation regarding the on-street residential charging installations ended on the 1st of December, and we'll now await West Sussex decision on these. And I forgot to say, and finally, with our leisure centres, have any of you been a winner in their 12 days of Christmas giveaways? No? This is something they do every year, and it's random, so it just shows you're not supporting the leisure centres. But please do visit, urge everyone, because they could have a present. Only remains for me to say Merry Christmas to you all and your families, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. I see no question. I apologise. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to the opportunity to deal with 2 points. Firstly, the leisure centres, which you know I use, and it's good to know that we have got an increase. It does seem busy when I go there, but today, for instance, I was in the swimming pool and I thought it's very low use, so I'm concerned. Now, this comes to the main point I was going to raise this evening. Was I attended yesterday, or Tuesday, the Hayward Heath Town Council ran what is formerly the Sports Forum, is now called Active Hayward Heath. And there was considerable concern that nobody from the district was representing that particular meeting. It ended up really me as being the representative, and I said I would raise this matter. There was somebody from Dolphins, because it's Hayward Heath, they were talking about dolphins there, and one of the points about the dolphins, or maybe all the leisure in Mid Sussex, is some of the cost and how we can try to facilitate those that can't afford some of these facilities. So it's something we need to look at. I think that if you could possibly get somebody involved with that particular group in future. And the other point was they had a great deal of difficulty, a lot of the sports groups that were there, in how to deal with the district council. I know that we facilitate the sports grounds, etc., but there seemed to be a problem with liaison, particularly one person maybe. So that would be useful. And I think that the overriding thing was there was an awful lot of people...
Bates, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you have a question for...
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of the people there were talking about football, inevitably, but 3G pitches seem to be a strong theme, a problem, and it seems that we are behind on that particular issue. So if we can look into that and report back. But if I could encourage somebody other than myself going to this particular meeting that's probably next.
Thank you. Do you wish to respond?
If I may, Madam. Thank you, Councillor Bates. If you'd invited me, I would have come. So please. So maybe you could tell Town Council. If I don't know about the day of the meeting, I would love to be the liaison officer. That's absolutely fine.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to ask Councillor Demir about the new electric vehicle charging points in Chequermead car park. And I was pleased to see them, and each time I go by there, they're sitting there with covers over them and they're not operational. I know it's an operational point, but I thought I'd just ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'm just looking because there have, Chequermead, you've had flooding there, haven't you, I believe? Bear with me and I will have a look because there was a reason for it.
Perhaps you could do a written response.
I'm very happy to
Thank
do,
you.
or I'll see you after, as they say, I'll see you after.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, last Cabinet Member for Housing and Customer Services. Sorry, Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a quick question. Is it possible, could you tell me who decided where the charging points were going to be placed in Mid Sussex? The reason I'm asking is in Turner's Hill, they're going to put 6 down a side street when not a person in that road's got a electric car, and the only place they can actually park is on the road. I just wondered who's decided where these are going to be placed in Mid Sussex, because obviously nobody's been consulted.
Councillor Demir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. You're talking about the on-street EV charging points. These were looked at by Connected Curb, who then, with West Sussex and Mid Sussex input, these have all gone out to consultation. So if people don't want them, they should actually say they don't want them, because I think I'm right in saying if they get 6 objections, then it will be crossed off the list.
Thank you.
Does that
Thank you,
help?
Councillor Demir. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. I'm now moving on to Cabinet Member for Housing and Customer Services, Councillor Cromie.
Great. Later on this evening, you're going to be receiving an email from me with a few links to share regarding the temporary toilet in the Orchards, the Warmer Homes UK programme, and the severe weather procedure which we've been implemented as a council. So I hope you find the email useful. Please share them on your own socials, but also into local community groups across Facebook in particular. There's going to be a lot more socials around the Orchards toilet as we document the temporary toilets going in, the demolition of the old toilet building, the delivery of the new unit, and then the opening. And that includes our fantastic Changing Places toilet. Just to take you back some time ago, this issue was initially raised by local resident Victoria Priest on social media, and she highlighted the issues she had changing her daughter in the old facilities. This her post sparked a huge debate, which was born into a campaign which successfully has seen these facilities being brought into town. So I want to give my thanks to her for sharing her experience so that others will benefit from years to come. You may have also seen the comms around the oak tree on the Cookfield recreational ground. Whilst that was an incredibly sad situation, it was important that there was that engagement from the comms team with the local community to keep them informed of the situation and work together on how best to deal with the situation. On the 20th of November, we held the Mid Sussex Applauds Awards event celebrating our amazing volunteers within the community. The event was fantastic and our comms team are focused on celebrating the winners and their amazing work. Moving on to housing, I spoke at the last council meeting about the work of the housing team in streamlining those processes to work more effectively. Now, while the figures around temporary accommodation can sometimes be misleading because some residents need more support and so therefore they need to stay in those accommodations longer so that their needs are being met. The team have worked really hard to bring their numbers down. So where we were last year, we had 128 people in temporary accommodation. That has gone down now to 70 people. And this is really important because we're now in a better position to accommodate an expected increase going forward. Moving on to customer services, there's been new resourcing options for the out-of-hours service, which has been agreed, and that will provide more effective coverage and improve the customer experience. We're already seeing improvement since the performance-related meeting with the supplier, and we'll be monitoring this going forward. Safeguarding Fortnight took place in November with various county-wide events with professionals promoted to staff. The biannual self-assessment was completed and submitted to West Sussex Safeguarding Children's Board. And lastly, the Revenue and Benefits team are currently in the process of sending out the last batch of discretionary energy payments as required. So this then brings that current scheme to a close. They will then move on to starting preparations for the annual billing process. It's important to note that the changing of circumstances for housing benefit and the council tax support claim service is still being demanded and impacted by the energy rebate processing. But hopefully we're now going to start to see the team catch up. So that's the end of my report. I want to wish you a lovely Christmas, and just a plug for the Bentsford Hub, which is going to be open on Christmas Day. So if you know anyone who is going to be alone on Christmas, please send them towards the Bentsford Hub, or give them my details, and I'll provide details of that, so no one should be alone at Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Very quick question. I'd like to thank the portfolio holder and the team that you represent. Very prompt answer to a poor resident in Crawley Down, even though it's not my ward, but they came to me. Simon and his team got somebody out very quickly, and then the follow-up now is nearly 3 weeks. Now, we know about that poor young boy who died up in Rochdale, I think it was Rochdale, of the mould killing him off. The pictures you saw that they had are nothing compared with the pictures that I submitted to your team. What they live in right now in Crawley Down is appalling. And the RFL, if you want to call them RFL, that lot anyway, Clarion, I'll name them, they didn't actually, they came out that day and said, oh, that's bad, isn't it? Well, we'll come back again in 3 weeks' time. In the meantime, they just left them. A young 3-year-old child with bad asthma made worse by the inactivity of Clarion. Your team was superb by getting them out. Can I ask you to kick some proverbial with Clarion and say 3 weeks is unacceptable? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor.
I knew someone would mention Clarion at some point. I agree with you. I think most councillors here would have had a negative experience working with the Housing Association. We already have a date in the diary to bring them in to ask them some questions. So actually maybe it would be appropriate if we emailed out to the councillors, allowed you the opportunity to feed in your comments so we can take all of your comments collectively to that meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd reinforce the previous questioner's issues about Clarion and their appalling repair service and the fact that they do leave tenants in dangerous positions where repairs have not been done for months or for years. So I'd welcome your feedback there. I was going to ask really about the out-of-hours service. And there were a couple of occasions I raised where the response time was an hour or more and the phone was left ringing, basically. Now, those were addressed at the time in terms of, I understand, with the provider, but I just wonder, following recent discussions, whether there's a particular service standard that we can commit to from the provider. So I'd be interested to hear your comments on that. Thank you.
Councillor Cromie.
Absolutely. I think maybe if we could take that offline and have a conversation, and then I can go back to the officers and take that forward.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the excellent comms that you provide us all. But could I just ask that we could have a reminder about, as we're entering a very cold period now, of StreetLink and the wonderful work the authorities do with homeless people. The app is excellent to use, and I think it's something we should all have on our phone and be encouraged to download. Thank you.
Councillor Cromie.
There have been comms just very recently on StreetLink, so if you look on my profile, you'll see their comms. I'll add that to the email that I'm sending out. I'll also, if it's helpful, I'll put a link to the app so everyone can find it. It's really, really helpful. It can sit on your phone, and when you see somebody who is homeless, you can simply, you don't need to, even if you're not in a position to engage with that person, you can log it on StreetLink. I've used it previously and it's been really helpful. I'll take that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Cromie. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to echo what's been said about Clarion. The casework that we've had has been very frequent and quite shocking. I can withdraw, in fact, my 10-2 question later on the agenda on this, because I have an answer now which has come through on the MIS.
Thank you.
And I'd like to praise the Housing Standards team, because every time I've had casework and I've copied them in, they've been really quick, nudging things forward and making sure that something is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was on a, so it's really a question about warm spaces and warm hubs. I was on a call with NHS Sussex Integrated Care and the Alliance for, the name escapes me, the Alliance for Better Care today, and they circulated a list. We've got 18 warm hubs across the district that they've circulated. I think it's going to go up to just over 20 next week. And from a district council communication standpoint, they're spread across the district. What engagement are we having as a district council with these bodies to advertise to residents where these warm hubs are and when they're open, and are we all joined up in that? Number one. Number two, whether there's any grant funding available from the district council to support the development of the warm hubs over the winter period. I'm speaking from experience at the moment because my central heating failed on Sunday, so I know how cold it can be. I'm more fortunate than most, but there are lots of vulnerable, disadvantaged people who are going to be in dire need and will need signposting to these various services. So I'd be interested to see how we're linking all that together and whether there's any money available.
Councillor Cromie.
Where we know about them, we'll absolutely publicise them. So probably the easiest, if you have a list, send them over to me, I'll send them over to the team, and then they can make the contact. I know quite a lot of the town councils are doing a really amazing job of promoting those. And I will talk to the team about picking that up and promoting them. But if you know them, send them over to us and we'll get them put onto the media grid. Grants isn't my area, it's Norman. So Councillor Webster, would you like to take that?
Thank you. I have been approached directly by several organisations who are in need of funding specifically. Some organisations are funding these facilities out of their own funds, but I have asked officers to please monitor the need for that, and we will obviously review that as time goes by. But I do want to, it just gives me an opportunity to say that the next funding round applications close on or about the 10th of January. So now is a good time to put in grant funding applications. And it's very easy to find by just searching for community grants, corporate grants in the search function on the website.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. I see no further questions, so I'm going to move on to the last item on the agenda, item 14, questions from members pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2. Councillor Eaves has withdrawn her question, so we have only one question outstanding, which is from Councillor Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was about the update on the district plan review, and given Councillor Ash Edwards' detailed update on that, I'll withdraw my question too.
Okay, thank you very much. I am now going to close the meeting at 8:50, and I would like to ask members to remain in place until the live stream has ended, and to remind them that refreshments are available in the committee room, and I welcome you all to join me for a drink.
Thank you, members.